So, Dermot, we're here in a bit of a different setting today for one of our episodes. We're here in a graveyard here in Dundalk, and we've travelled from the office here today. This is something we've been thinking about doing for a couple of weeks now. And really why we're here today is we realise that November is the month in which we remember those who have passed away, our loved ones, friends. And really today we wanted to maybe have a wee bit of a conversation around that there. But before we maybe go into that there, it's also, believe it or not, a year since we filmed our first episode of the Redjuvenate podcast.
Yeah.
And sort of starting this podcast, thinking about those who maybe have came before, I think it's important because the podcast and the origin of the podcast was inspired by the stories of people who are no longer with us. And I thought maybe just get us started. Do you want to share a wee bit about, first of all, coming back to that vision of why the Redjuvenate podcast exists, the name, what it's about, and thinking about how we've captured that vision or began to plant them seeds over the past year?
Yeah, I think it's been quite profound. We've actually just walked past the plot of the Redemptor's fathers that are no longer with us, our faithful departed. And that was a big inspiration for maybe doing our Redjuvenate podcast. And as you said, we're coming up to a year, Ogie, of beginning this. And I suppose for anyone maybe hitting a click here to watch into us guys talking in a graveyard here today, the idea behind it all was, I suppose, was just to share those memories, to be able to protect legacies as well of amazing people that are with us and also are no longer with us. But also that word rejuvenate, I think, is very, very important, which means to make young again, but also to allow people to see maybe or hear maybe acts of witness, acts of courage, acts of faith through, I suppose, the idea of our charism as people working for the Redemptors to allow that charism to come through. Alphonsus was known as the person with the pen, and I think us, by doing something like this, is a new means of using technology as a way of getting a message across. So the vision of doing the Rejuvenate podcast was really just to help others and to allow young and old to come together to share, to learn about some amazing inspirations and for hopefully people to discover something new, fresh, and to be young at heart.
And has there been any growth you've seen in yourself through this podcast? Have you seen any growth in terms of, I don't know, your faith or your understanding, or even seeing the possibilities of what this podcast can bring?
Yeah, I think both of us, we have chats from time to time. I think we get that imposter syndrome at times. I think for anyone mightn't feel worthy of doing something. I certainly would never feel comfortable doing this. I'm grateful for the faith that I've been given, but never feel comfortable talking about it on camera. So here today, that's definitely a sign of our maybe knowledge, confidence, and also that attitude of we all can do it. We just do it. And you've heard that expression around we've all the gear and no idea. But it's great that even to have the power here today. We have these mics, get them clipped up, we have good sound, but we also have amazing people that are maybe behind the camera, like wonderful volunteers that are able to do this with us today. We all simply can take the use of a mobile phone, we all have them, and to try and make it for the better use of others. So we started doing this over a year ago where we piloted to say we want to put a decent standard to this, and we put a bit of high production and all behind it, and we've learned from that as well. That takes a lot of work in doing that, in the editing, but also I think we're very lucky and privileged in our roles that we get to go places, we get to meet people, and you know, we've seen how we've been able to, if we want to say diversify, we've been able to bring young people into this space to hear voices of young people at a local context. We've brought our young people from Scala into this amazing space to lead and to bring local leaders in that space. But we've also, again, something of the charism of the Redemptors is on the streets and wherever we go. I've seen like when we've been maybe in Cherry Orchard or Ballyfermot, or if we've maybe been overseas, just to be able to feel comfortable to say, right, there's an energy for it, and let's go with it. And the future, hopefully there is a future to doing something like this. And I think for others that might be watching in, hopefully watch this space, we might bring other people into the space. You may not have to listen to our voices much longer. I think it's important that it's us trying and showing and doing, and us feeling comfortable that we can also show that vision for others maybe to come into that space. What about you? Or have you seen much development, or are you enjoying it? Because at the end of the day, this is a vision that I think I shared with you, and I am handing it over for you to run with it, Ogie. So, like, what's your learnings from it all? Like, I know you've been behind a lot of the technical and digital and IT side, and maybe an idea of coming to a graveyard to talk about the faithful department wasn't really in the agenda, but it was just an idea that I wanted to share with you to make it happen, and you're making it happening right now. What have you learned from it all?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is it's not about where you expect to be. It's about using this as a great opportunity to try something new and to push yourself out of that maybe comfort zone. I remember a long time ago I heard the phrase "seek discomfort."
Yeah, I like that.
You know,
That's
and
good.
I think that there has been a great challenge that we've been able to. We've been able to do ourselves as well, Dermot. And I think when you're talking about bringing people into the space, I think we're bringing people into this space because we know that it can bring out so much. Like, I feel like myself, my own confidence to be able to talk about things out loud, to have the conversations with yourself, to come here and talk about something that is can be serious, can be a wee bit done, and we will get into that in a moment. So I think all that there and potential of growth, I think it does lead into what we want to do, which is to help young people develop their skills and give them a platform for their voice to be heard.
Yeah.
And so I think coming back into sort of maybe why we're here maybe today, I think it is talking about that our voices as well comes off the courage of other voices beforehand. I was chatting with my dad yesterday, and he was talking about a diary he used to keep of different times after certain masses from St. Joseph's, and when we were looking at that plot, I could see some of the names that were in the plot were some of the names that he was mentioning and some of the things that he was writing. And you're talking about how you pass down the faith. You pass it down through the words that we use, the conversations that we have, and that we're not rewriting the book with this here, but we're being brave enough to be that next generation. And that's really what it is about, giving to the next generation them tools that have been given to us, about speaking about this gift. And maybe if that's the time maybe to come into that, to talk about when we're thinking about our faithful departed. We're here in the graveyard today. We're seeing loved ones and family members coming to pay respects to their loved ones here. Why do you think it's important that we keep them traditions of remembering those who've came before us and are no longer with us here in this world? Why do you think it's an important tradition to keep?
Yeah, I think it's a really important tradition, and I'm not saying that we as Irish do it maybe different or better or anything like that, but I think it's a great tradition to keep because I think it's important that we remember the legacies of people. You know, people will ask you, what is your legacy going to be? But I always remember hearing something is on your, I suppose, deathbed or tombstone. What do you want to be written on that? What do you want people to remember you for? I know we don't get the opportunity to do that. We just get the person's name and when they died and who they belong to. But that says a lot in itself as well, that there's someone behind that tombstone. But also, I think it's important to remember the life that they've maybe given others as well. And also, I think it's really important that it's an act of mercy. The church's teaching on that, on especially acts of charity and acts of mercy, I think are very, very important. Acts of mercy being, clothe the naked, feed the hungry, shelter the homeless, look after the sick, visit those in prison, but also it's burying the dead and looking after our graves and doing that as well. So I think it's an act of mercy, and sometimes words like that can give thrown about very, very easy in today's society. So I think it's really, really important that we remember, but it's actually us who are living are able to preserve memories, protect legacies, but also do a simple act of mercy. And that could be simply in this month that we remember our faithful departed. We have all year to remember faithful departed, but I think there's something important, comforting, especially in the dark months. There's a change in a lot of seasons going on. We've seen it ourselves. Like I've just seen us went from Halloween to Christmas all of a sudden. But that transition of what we've seen on All Saints' Days into All Souls' Day, and then we have the month of Holy Souls. But we have this month dedicated to the faithful departed. I think it's very, very important that we take time. It might bring comfort to someone to visit a grave, or in those dark days of coming into winter, that people are actually comforted to remember. And I think I think that there's an act of mercy in doing that. Okay, that's something that I've learned. I think it's okay to say that I was not always fully comfortable about walking around the graveyard. As a young person, I was very flippant about all of that. And I think, as you said, seek discomfort earlier. I think that's really, really important that you've actually mentioned that, because we have to be challenged. You mentioned a term like I'm currently reading the book The Road Less Travelled, which is all about love, discipline, spiritual growth, and I think that there's something in all of that discipline, love and spiritual growth that speaks into what we're maybe talking about here today, especially about looking after our loved ones who have faithfully departed.
Yeah, I think when I think about that idea of tradition and keeping it, I like what you said there about that we do have the power to remember our faithful departed all year round, and it is nice that in these times of change that it's maybe reinvigorated, that we're reconnected with them people and the memories that we have of our loved ones. And I always think in my house growing up, every night before bed, one of my parents would come up and they would say this little prayer to us, and that was our way of saying out loud the names of those who came before. It was little Jesus, meek o' mild, look on me, a little child. If I die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. And then we would bless my granny, my granda, my mother, my sister. And then we would talk about the names of those that maybe were no longer with us. And I remember it was a great opportunity there to learn the names of our family members, both who were with us and those who maybe weren't with us. And although maybe I didn't meet my uncle or my grandma, for us, it felt like they were alive, or that they knew us, even though I never actually met them. Yeah. And suddenly you had a connection to them, because like that there, you were taking that time every evening to mention their name, to remember. And then from that there, it could lead to a conversation asking, and what was grandma like, ma? Or, what was your brother like? And that idea of keeping their names alive leads to learning more about our loved ones and passing down them stories as well. So I think for me, those were the people that were always coming to my mind in that tradition. Is there anybody that comes to your mind whenever you're thinking of the faithful departed?
I think it's lovely there what you've mentioned there, Ogie, that preserving the names. I think that's very, very important, the power of names. I'm just looking at our Redemptorist plot here. There's definitely I don't want to leave anybody out, but like there's unbelievable inspiration. I just think of recently there we've had a burial, and I wish I got to know that person a little bit more. But for a lot of our Redemptorist fathers and brothers, and again, one of the ideas of how this podcast then to come about was I wanted to learn more of the past, the names of those people, and the journeys that they would have done, the voyages that they would have went on to, the missions, spent 40, 50, 60 years, and if it's wherever that might be, somewhere, if it's the Philippines or somewhere in Brazil, or wherever that might have been, just simply here in Dundalk, just being a really good role model for people. So I think when you ask that question, someone I think of, there's definitely, I think of role models. Of course, you're talking about your granny and your granddad there. I really think of role models in this time, and I think last year when we started the podcast, it was just at the time of a good friend that died, and you did push me to seek discomfort at that time, to talk into that, and I really appreciate it that I had the opportunity to speak about my friend who passed away. And yeah, he suddenly passed away, but he left an amazing legacy, and last Friday was his year anniversary, and I was just very I was just very mindful that lots of things have happened in this week that I'm very grateful. Lots of grace moments. You might like to ask me what they are in a few minutes, Ogie. But yeah, I think of my friend so much. I feel him being right here, right now. I don't know, whatever people's beliefs are, whatever fuller beliefs in greater powers or spirits are. I feel him right here, right now, in everything that's happened to me this week. Very grateful, very thankful for great opportunities this week of amazing connections, and there's been definitely 4 or 5 great connections this week, and do you know what? They've all, the common theme or the common denominator in all is that person who's now gone, but either had connected us in a past, or I was telling a story about him and somebody went further to ask about him, and then they actually really knew him, they went to school with him, or it might have been a young person that we were part of a youth group I've reconnected with deeply, and it has been that person that has connected us both, so yeah, I'm very, very grateful for the people that have given us opportunities, life. That's certainly a role model for me. And you mentioned a prayer there, and I'm also thinking about the prayer that we say at the time of somebody passing, that the eternal prayer, eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let the perpetual light shine upon them. And that word perpetual, is the light of God, it's the light of heaven, it's the light of the kingdom. And I certainly feel, we just sometimes say that at times of people deceasing or departed, but I really feel that, Brian is there, he's with us, and his spirit is with us right now.
Thanks, and thanks again for sharing. And I think it is important that we, for each other, that you push to say people's names and things like that there. And I think when we think about, maybe if we were to go a wee bit deeper, I can remember last year that being a wee bit of that's a tough time, and grief can be a tough time for so many people, losing loved ones. And I think as a young person, and still even now as a young adult, there's a misunderstanding of how do you deal with grief, and it's quite a personal thing, and it is lovely to hear about how now a year later you're still able to feel the presence of Brian within you and keep that spirit of him alive, because through that there I've got to learn about people that have impacted your life, and then people like that can become a role model for more people through you. And
well, what about you? This is, I'm not necessarily saying this is for young people, this is certainly we want people to click subscribe, all generations, all ages, but I think that is, we did talk about that seek discomfort, and for young people maybe death and grief is difficult to comprehend, but for you, is there anything do you like to share around how you've maybe dealt with grief, or is any of this stuff difficult for you?
It does be difficult. I know you were speaking earlier on about the tradition in Ireland of the wake, and I remember that for a number of years after my auntie passed away, it was kind of a shock. It all happened so quickly. I'd seen my auntie on the Sunday, and she was no longer with us by the Wednesday.
Okay.
And I remember that wake, just because like that, the circumstances, and being I was only 10 at the time, and just like I remember the experience of the wake had a bit of an impact on me where I couldn't separate any time I would go to maybe another wake. I would feel uncomfortable because them feelings of that grief that I probably couldn't name it at the time, but it was that grief that nearly, you know, the scariness and the sadness that you know sometimes you can feel uncomfortable with, you know. And I think for myself, overcoming that over time, over conversation, especially with my parents and my family, and also probably from the courage of people like my granny, who, you know, that was her daughter, and you know the courage of my granny to still go to mass with us every Sunday, to ask us to light a candle, and to really, you know, find hope in her daughter's memory, or my auntie's memory, like, you know. And for me, it's those are the powerful role models there, about how in times whenever, you know, there's great loss, great pain sometimes, that courage to how you're able to turn around to bring it back to life, and the life of those people, how they can live on through us, and that's been something that's taken a long time to really learn and to become more comfortable and realise maybe the importance of remembering those who have came before us. Like.
I think it's also the sacredness of life as well. You know, it's the greatest gift that we've all been given, and it's really the importance of the gift of life. And as you've said there, like, of course, grief and death, it brings great darkness, but hopefully by being able to, everyone processes grief totally different. I know and can imagine, and it could be just simply just doing a small step today. It could be coming to a graveyard, pushing yourself to overcome something. It could be maybe lighting a candle at home, or maybe within a church. It's just I think there's something powerful in what you mentioned there about candle, and when I was talking into the perpetual light as well, like, I thought that was just an analogy that came to me, the importance of lighting a candle. You know, we light candles and massive celebrations of life, if it's birthdays and anniversaries, and we make wishes and things like that, but we also at times of you know, we think of the eternal light, we think of the paschal candle that's been lit in our baptism, and it's there through all of our great times as well. But also in times of difficult, people do light candles as well, and we think of remembrance. We think of in this month of the faithful departed, and if we come back here later tonight, we'll see so many candles lit as well.
How do you, in your own experience in life, dealing with the difficulties of loss, but also coming back to that, you know, how have you been inspired, or how inspired to live your life based off maybe the faithful departed, those role models in your own life? How does it inspire you, their lives inspire you to live your life now?
I think for me, I always talk about the gift of life, but also the gift of faith that I've been given. I always give thanks to the amazing women in my life, my grandmother, my mother, who is still with us, of course, and my wife. And they've been a great guide for me in my faith from such a young age. And I think it's important that whatever way that we can do things, I'm taking a different approach maybe, to maybe how my parents might have done certain things to me. I think how I'm inspired is still inspired by those that maybe have departed, by great traditions of it, if it is, you know, looking after others whilst they're here, but also remembering them as well. And I am a father to three children, and I think it's really important that we're able to do our best, as what your family done as well, talked about people, you know, not saying protect, but also to preserve the memories and try to imagine and get creative thinking about who these people were, what they'd done, give the opportunity to ask questions. I think that's really, really wonderful, you know. And I think that's been something that I've had to work through as well. I think it's alright to share with you, Ogie. Like in our own family and in my own house, we had a stillbirth. I have a son in heaven, Micah, and what I've tried to do, it's been it's been hard. It's been my own grief that I've had to go through, my family as well, and how that has affected us. But I've wanted to make sure that his sisters know about him. He had all the shapes and makes. He just needed a little bit more time. But I know that he is doing a mighty job for us in his eternal home. And he's guiding and protecting us when we're on earth. And I think over the years, I for me, the biggest part of grief was I could never go to the grave. And it wasn't maybe until lockdown where I was restricted to where I could walk. One of the places that I could walk to in that radius of lockdown was to the local chapel and to the local grave, and that was really important time for me, and I think it was a time that I needed. There was no masses going on, but you could still walk into the church and light a candle, and that was pretty good. That gave a bit of comfort at that time, and on those daily walks. And then I started to gradually actually feel okay to go into the graveyard. I didn't want to be thinking that's where my son is. So that's been a process for me, and even now, and what I would want to say to folks is as well, that whatever your thoughts, belief are in the faithful departed, they are with us wherever they are. If they're in heaven, if they're in the sky, if they're whatever way that you feel comfort in that right now. And for my girls, they know that they have a brother, and yeah, I think I shared with you recently that our daughter Grace loves doing little drawings, and anytime she's doing a drawing of the family, she will either have her brother somewhere in that, if it's in a shape of a butterfly, a robin, a Paw Patrol character, and I'll ask who's that, and she'll say that's Micah, that's my brother. And recently in school, I don't know if it was in Grow and Love, she's so authentic and so beautiful in her spirit that she was asked, I think, what does heaven look like, and she was able to say heaven looks like, and she named a child that had passed away in her school and her baby brother, and they're up there and they're having a party. So I was just like, you know what, I'm not saying my job's done there, but if she's getting comfort out of that, I think that's amazing. And another thing about visiting graves, my wife or my grandmother will know that my kids have been to the graveyard, because my kids love going to the graveyard now, because one of their jobs is collecting all the despair artificial flowers that have blown off people's graves, and they will gather them up, and they will either put them back places, or they might take one home and place them around the back door, which doesn't always go down well with my wife, but that's just a little bit I just wanted to share, and hopefully people take a bit of help, comfort from that. Everyone's grief's different, okay, and that's something very, very close to me, something that was very raw, of a grave, of a coffin. And for young people, I think that it is very raw, it's very discomfort, it's very vulnerable time for people, and we don't get the opportunity to actually talk about that. It's just a process of life. There we are, there's a grave, that's where the dead might go, but maybe they don't get the process until maybe something else arises its head, or maybe another tragic thing in their life happens, or another death comes along, or it's maybe not until they're older where they just take it as this is life. Yeah, I think it's also just to say that maybe everyone doesn't get the opportunity to process all that, or maybe they find that very, very difficult. So I would say that it's okay to feel that way. I know we don't want to be taking taglines of other things that have been done, but it's okay not to be able to do that. But it's important that you might just say to someone, out there that this is how I'm feeling. I can't describe my feelings, and it's about maybe finding a good friend or someone that you could turn to help with that processing, or just to take time, just to, who knows, the faithful departed might guide you and strengthen you in that time. It's maybe just turning and just in the silence in your mind and in your heart, just naming that person, as you've said already, and who knows, that person might be able to guide and give you that strength.
Yeah.
Do you want me to read a wee prayer?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just found this prayer earlier, and I just thought, like, listen, I said a prayer for you, and I was just thinking that for our faithful departed, who are no longer with us here on earth, but are with us in heaven. I get great strength knowing that they're there doing a job for us when we are here on earth. So I think it's really important that they're also praying maybe for us to give us the guide and the strength. So I took a bit of comfort that this is being said from our loved ones in heaven to us here this day, for us to keep going as well. May the Lord be your source of strength and always by your side. May your heart be filled with faith in the Lord, who is a loving guide. May your heart's desires be granted and all your plans fulfilled. May all your fears and worries in your heart and mind be calm and still. I thank God every time I think of you. In all my prayers for you, I always pray with joy. Amen.
Amen.